Yeah, so we started last year in 2019 when with this project got approved by the Climate Kick, and we began with interviewing actually cities from all across Europe with a strong density in Italy, as you can see on this picture, to see kind of what the current status quo was of nature-based solutions in Europe, seeing also looking at what the strengths were, and also in some cases what might be improved to become more resilient, seeing the current climatic changes that are taking place. So it's quite interesting to interview cities from the north, from the south, from east, from west, to kind of see how the different regions were also coping with nature-based solutions. Yes, next slide, please. So based on these 12 interviews, some of the cities are actually here participating. So you'll know that, and some of you are also new, so welcome, and we'd be happy to also include you on this list on our website. But based on these interviews, we also found the main barriers as well as some drivers that Jura will talk about later. But so a lot of the barriers were they're listed here that came out of the interviews, and we noticed that one of them is the lack of narratives of change, and this actually consists of two different parts. So you have the narrative content, and that's about how social innovation takes place, and that some cities, for example, they have a kind of a culture that they believe that the future holds a lot of the same, and it's hard to imagine alternative futures where there's a lot of innovation and alternative possibilities than the ones they currently have in their culture. And there's also a narrative construction. So how these narratives are developed within municipalities, and just like with companies, we notice that there's there are different tendencies. So in some cases, there's a lot of hierarchical governance structures that take place, so that it's very top down, and that if the politicians that are higher up don't buy into the nature-based solutions, then there's really no mandate to really imagine these alternative futures, so to say. But we also noticed that there's a lot of municipalities that have a more communal approach, and those narratives are a bit more resilient, as they're not dependent on one person, so they don't change every time there's a new vote, but that there's actually a lot of different actors and a lot of different people giving their input to think about alternative futures and the issues that the cities are dealing with, creating a more resilient narrative, and that helps a lot to think progressively and become more resilient in terms of green infrastructure. So some other points that are mentioned here are a difficulty to prove a tangible business case, which is of course always challenging, as it's hard to really make this quantitative with nature, but there's also a lot of research being done on this, and there's a lot of progress being made. And of course, there's a lot of knowledge and experience gaps that we noticed in the different regions in Europe also, but also in terms of different challenges and coping with these challenges. And also, like I mentioned, the leadership and vision always plays a big role. So if there's a very hierarchical governance structure, then it's often very difficult to create a resilient mandate, because it takes some time to implement nature-based solutions. So if this constantly changes with the hierarchical structure and the different people in the hierarchy, then it's often difficult to continuously implement nature-based solutions. So these were some of the the main points that came out of the interviews that we noticed from the cities that were the main barriers for implementing nature-based solutions. But Jure can also talk about the main drivers. So I'll give the floor to him.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much for introducing the barriers. I would like to quickly go through the drivers for implementing nature-based solutions. They come partly from the interviews we've done. Also, they come from our previous work that we've done in Horizon 2020 projects. And of course, there are many other drivers for implementing nature-based solutions, not only these 4 ones, but these 4 ones might resonate with most of you. Of course, the first driver is changing climate and public health concerns. Cities are increasingly facing heat island effect issue. There's a lot of flash floods in the cities, river floods, also storm surges in coastal areas. And of course, this was the case in the past, but now it's becoming even more serious, and it's happening more often, which is the case. Then the second driver, which is worth to mention, is that cities are trying to become greener. Cities would like to be pleasant for people that live in cities. So it's about creating of public spaces that are healthy and nice to spend time. Then the third driver, maybe we can call this enabler for implementing nature-based solutions, is knowledge that your city have. It's also about the stakeholder network that you have, and we will go deeper into this in the interactive part of the workshop. And then the fourth one, last but not least, are economic advantages of using nature-based solutions. And this is related what Julian mentioned about the business case for nature-based solutions. And I mean, from perspective of our organization, this is a key aspect to consider. But of course, it's not always easy to monetize benefits of nature-based solutions, which is the main barrier at the moment. Next slide, please. On a few next slides, I would like to show you some examples that demonstrate these drivers. The first one is for the changing climate and increased heat. There's a medium-sized city in Switzerland called Sion. It's in French-speaking part of Switzerland, and the city developed very recently its adaptation plan, and they identified places that were kind of troubling the city from the perspective of the increased heat. And on the right picture, you can see a place which was completely concrete a few years ago, and is basically a coverage of the highway, of the main highway, which is going through the city. This place was very important for the city because it's connecting 2 communities, but the problem was that people avoided that place because it was very hostile. Next slide, please. On the next slide, you will see some intervention that the city did in the last 5 years. They implemented small green islands that you can see on the right picture. They planted 700 maple trees in the area, and they also implemented some social facilities such as a skate park for young people, and also a coffee shop to bring the community together. These days, this place is really one of the most vibrant places in the city. I was actually very happy to be there 3 weeks ago, and it's absolutely amazing what nature-based solutions can do if you implement them in a way that you combine climate change concerns and community needs. Thank you. Next slide. The next driver that I mentioned was creation of vibrant public spaces, and of course, in many cities, the issue is that you don't have a space to actually integrate nature-based solutions. So therefore, you need a lot of innovation. The city of Zurich in Switzerland did really interesting project last year, and I suppose this will also happen this year and in coming years. They created a mobile foldable native Swiss meadow. That's how I would call it. With few trees and wooden benches, and they also integrated an educational section into this meadow. So basically, they could construct these nature-based solutions in literally in few hours. So it was, I think, 4 or 5 hours. This was a very much project that people loved from that work in the area. People spent time there. People could learn about nature and about native flora of Switzerland. So this is perhaps a solution that many cities of you could consider, especially in the old town, where there's basically no space to implement nature-based solutions and plant trees. Next slide, please. Another driver and enabler of nature-based solutions, the dimension is the knowledge that you build on a local level, but also on a national level and international level. And you might know the platforms that you can see on this slide. So it's OPLA platform, Think Nature platform, which really these platforms focus on cities, but there are also different knowledge sources such as Business for Nature or Natural Infrastructure for Business that focus on collaboration of the private sector and cities to implement nature-based solutions. There's also a NIAD project. Elena is here from the NIAD project, and this project is a very interesting one because it is focusing on the insurance value of nature. So they're working with insurance industry, which is absolutely amazing and I think key for the future. Next slide, please. And the last driver that I mentioned was the economic driver. And nature-based solutions are supposed to be cost-effective. Of course, this is not always the case, but I like the example of green tram tracks that are 15 to 20% cheaper than asphalted tram tracks. At least this is the case in Germany and Switzerland. That was the outcome of our research. Of course, gravel is cheaper, but it's not really the best fit for your city if you consider building tram tracks in the city center. So in this case, you can see that nature-based solutions are cheaper, but they can also provide co-benefits that they look nicer, and then you can also increase the retention capacity of the environment and avoid, for example, flooding. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see another driver, which is also economic driver, which is about avoiding costs and paying lower insurance premium. On the left graph, you can see losses from some selected natural events in Switzerland in the period of 73 and 2011, and you can see that floods are really the main issue here. I checked some figures also from the Munich Re database, and Munich Re says that 40% of all damages globally are caused by flooding. So flooding is one of the key driver for implementing nature-based solutions, and I'm sure that most of the cities that are here they could speak a lot about flooding. On the right part, you can see the role of the reinsurance sector. Munich Re and Swiss Re, from our experience, these two companies are the key leaders, global leaders in insuring natural assets, such as nature-based solutions. They're also assuring performance of nature-based solutions. And they can also insure the construction phase of nature-based solutions because it can be very vulnerable phase, of building your nature-based solutions, and could be perhaps damaged by weather-related events. So, insurance sector has a key role to play in de-risking natural infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have the city of Strovolos from Cyprus. Haris from the Cyprus Energy Agency mentioned the cities from Cyprus that are engaged in the project, and we are very happy for that. Cities from Cyprus also face significant flood risk, and on this map you can see 20, 100, 500 year floods. What can actually happen if this flood occur? And you can see how many damages they can cause. So implementing nature-based solutions upstream might be one of the measures that cities can consider to actually lower the peak of the floods in the city, and hence can avoid a lot of damages in the city. Next slide, please. On these last three slides, I would like to invite the cities to submit maybe if you have any innovative idea on how to finance nature-based solutions and similar green projects, you can actually submit your idea to this project, which is called the City Finance Lab. Next slide, please. This is also a Climate Kick project, which is partly financed by Climate Kick. South Pole is the leader of the project. And on this slide, you can see two of few winning projects from the last year. One is the Paris Green Fund and Lisbon Green Participatory Budget, which are actually ways how you can structure your budgets to allow more nature-based solutions to be financed in your city. I know Sophie from Manchester is here. Manchester is also one of the winning projects and is also part of the City Finance Lab. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is the way you can apply. The call for proposals will open soon for you. So if you have any idea on how to finance nature-based solutions, please submit your idea and the project can support you, or we can advise you. We can design that financial mechanism with you, and you can also get some budget to do so. So that can be of your interest. I think I will stop here. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me and to the project.